Ladies and gentlemen, this is your final boarding call for the good ship SS tomorrow.
Today on The Friendly Futurist, Kaluza Revisited. And welcome back. And on board today on SS Tomorrow, we are revisiting old friends, and we're revisiting our friends over at Kaluza, Australia. And you might remember them from season 15, episode 3, where we chat to Gavin Mooney. Unfortunately, Gavin's since left, but you can actually still follow him on LinkedIn. He's becoming one of the top voices in LinkedIn. I'll put the details for him in the show notes. But instead of Gavin, in his place, we have Jesse Warburg, also from Kaluza, and he's more qualified to chat about Australia's transition to renewable energies. Because you remember that what we're doing with this revisiting, we're going to answer that penultimate question I always ask my guests: where you see the world in 5 to 10 years' time. And you might remember, it's about 5 years into this project, or, as you will, the flight of the good ship SS Tomorrow. So, and I'd like to give you a bit more information, a bit of background information too, because there's a significant milestone was reached in the transition to renewable energies September 2025. Here in Australia, renewables out-generated both coal and gas combined for the first time. It's significant. I know. It's not saying we do a victory lap and saying the transition is complete. It's the first step. Now, we've got summer, we've got air conditioning coming up, so it's really a test of the grid. But it's not just Australia, it's also worldwide where this was the case that happened this year. So we are on track, and give it 10 years, and this will become the norm. I'm going to be open-minded about the green versus blue, if you know what I mean. But it's reasons to be cautiously optimistic. And this show is all about cautious optimism at the end of the day. So Jesse is going to join us after the break. And welcome back. And continuing our special, we're going to catch up with previous guests who I had over the last 5 years. And we got Kaluza back. Unfortunately, Gavin's no longer with us, but we've got Jesse Warburg. He's going to fill in and let us know where it's all progressing. And Jesse, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm been listening to a few of your episodes and enjoyed them quite a bit. Thanks.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. I always love when people come back. So Jesse, just let my listeners know about your journey so far and start where everyone start.
Sure, absolutely. I grew up in the US and then migrated to Australia 21 years ago. And my role in energy, I've been in the industry for almost all of that 20 years now that I've been in Australia. I worked at retailers, primarily got a background in economics. I'm an economist by training. I've worked in a number of retailers selling electricity to consumers and large business users. And I had a background in trading and hedging. So a retailer like AGL, who's an equity investor in Kaluza, where I work now, for example, what they do is they sell energy to you at a fixed price, but they've got to go and procure that at a variable price. And so it's kind of a classic fixed and floating trade. Yeah, that's in the kind of the heart of my journey. And I've been in software for the last probably decade now, building tools for companies like AGL and others around the world.
Yeah. Now, a question I'm going to ask my return guests, are we still on track from the prediction that you made the previous episode since the last time we spoke?
I think so. I think if anything, things are accelerating. I was reflecting on some of the changes we've had recently. And I think one of the biggest ones is the federal election and the rollout of the federal solar battery rebate. So if you want to put in a new battery system at your home, you can get 30% rebated immediately, which is quite a significant cost decrease. And we've seen batteries follow the path of solar, which is explode into consumers. And, right now, I think the last numbers I saw were, as a nation, installing more than 1,000 battery units per day. which is quite a lot. It is the fastest pace in the world. It's the fastest we've ever seen here. And it sort of echoes the solar boom over the last 15, 20 years. We've got more solar on more rooftops than any other country in the world. And it looks like batteries are set to follow. So we're sort of seeing things accelerate, if anything. And I think that that's really kind of leading to the additional complexity of the system. You know, we've got more different ways for energy to be produced and consumed. And we've got this bidirectional flows. Things are getting more complicated, but they are starting to move faster, I would say.
Yeah, and that's probably an interesting note that I think overall is about a third, I believe, that of houses in this country have ripped off solar, but here in WA, it's just about a half. But are we future-proof enough if in case when that number jumps to say a third to say 75%, 85% of homes? So that's going to lead to a lot of glut in the system.
Potentially. I don't know if glut is the way I would characterize it, but that's the sort of thing we hear a lot about in the industry. I think like there's a term we've used a bit, the paradox of plenty, which I think is a little bit more applicable at times. We've got lots of wind, lots of solar, and we've got hydroelectricity. I live in Tasmania, so we've got lots of hydro and it's growing pumped hydro in other places. We've got complexity. We absolutely do need to do a bunch of things as a system, from government to consumers to businesses, to support that. But there are plenty of ways through. I mean, I think the ones we do need continued support of governments around, particularly supporting infrastructure like transmission lines and more poles and wires, because we've got this more diffuse, more complex system. We've got to have better ways, better mechanisms for moving those electrons around and efficiently allocating them. One of the interesting things that we see a lot of, you know, I kind of focus on large energy users or commercial and industrial C&I users. When we build tools to help support them, is sort of finding a way to let them push their sustainability goals, because we're seeing that led very much by businesses, actually, which is kind of an unusual thing in some markets, who want to have sustainability and they want orchestration and they want to be able to know that their energy is coming from this mix of wind and solar and battery and have it all kind of tied up neatly in a bow. There are some big challenges ahead, but I think that kind of paradox of plenty is a solvable problem. There's a lot of modeling done on it, but it is a complex problem. There's no tidy solution, unfortunately. If you have one, let me know. I would absolutely love to hear it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think sometimes it could be just like if it's centralized and consumer to consumer. I think it's things ways shaping up. It's interesting times ahead. Certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the current buzzword going around renewables is VPP, or virtual power station. Can you explain to me about that like I'm 12?
Yeah, absolutely. So virtual power plants are probably an overly complex term. I think that the anecdote that I like to use is to think about like one electric vehicle, right? Because increasing proliferation of electric vehicles. I just got an electric vehicle. It's quite fun. I quite enjoy it. But it makes you think about how that car is charged. And so every night I go and I plug it in at 6 p.m. when I come home from work, and then I want it to be charged to some level by the morning. Now, I could just plug it in and have it charge up immediately. The problem with that as a grid is that 6 to 8 p.m. is the kind of period during the day where energy prices are really high, because demand for energy is really high, because everybody's come home and they've all plugged their cars in and they're all watching Netflix and they're all making dinner. And so that is probably the worst time to charge the car from a system perspective. And so I would rather, as a system, that my car plugs in at 6 and then maybe waits until 10 or 11 p.m. and charges up then, when prices are low and demand is less on the system. Now, it gets more complicated if you add in things like wind and solar, because, you know, what if at 10 p.m. there's not a lot of wind blowing around the country? And so there's a supply constraint as well. That means that there's no cheap wind energy available. So maybe 10 p.m. is a bad time as well, and I should wait till 2. And then this is increasingly complex. Like I said, if I think about this during the day, if I plug the car in during the day, and I've got to work out, should I charge the car from the grid? Should I charge it from the solar if it's available? Should I charge it from the battery that I've got installed at my home, or do it all in some different manner? And that's just one car for one day. What a virtual power plant does is basically take that challenge and add it up and go, if I were going to think about not just one car, but 1,000 or 1,000,000, How will I orchestrate them? And this is kind of the heart of what Kaluza is working on with companies like HL, is how do we manage outcomes that serve you as a consumer and allow you to make sure that the car is full in the morning when you want to go driving, but you've also filled it in an optimal way for the system and for the retailer, frankly, who has to pay for those electrons to get them delivered to your home. So it's a really kind of, the simple problem magnifies quite rapidly if you start adding in devices and you're adding in weather complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the term is Dunkelflaute as well. Yeah, that's when.
Yeah. Dunkelflaute. Yeah. Which I can talk to if you want. Like we hear a lot about it. Yeah, the basic idea, it's a German word, which I'm sure I've pronounced poorly. So apologies to your German listeners. But the idea is that if you have a system that has a high dependency on weather, which we do if we have a high wind and solar generation mix, which is increasingly happening in places like South Australia, even more so than the rest of Australia, then a couple of times a year, you're going to have no wind and you're going to have no solar. It's going to be cloudy for long periods. And the Dunkelflaute is like a long period where this happens, where it might be 3 weeks or something, which is a very long time in an energy system, where you've got cloud and low wind. And basically the idea is that you can't, or it's difficult to support that system with just wind and solar. And, the kind of obvious solution in that case is things like battery systems. And the challenge that we hear a lot about in energy markets is whether a battery at your home that might have 4, 6, or 8 hours of energy stored in it, does that work if we've got to go 3 weeks? It's a harder problem. I'm not an expert in this area, but from what I understand, these events are quite rare. And, they're once or twice a year at most. And so there's got to be some other kind of piece in the mix. And maybe that's continued very small use of gas or some other energy mix or long duration batteries or seasonal pumped hydro. It's the one I hear about a lot. Yeah. So it's a difficult problem though.
It's a very difficult problem.
Rare one.
Yeah. It's rare in Australia, and I'm led to believe it's more common in places like Northern Europe where.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, when you go to places like Scandinavia, it's only like 6 hours of daylight in the winter.
It's harder to make the ROI on those solar panels. It is.
Yeah. I also sometimes think things like tidal and, even geothermal. We got, the Great Australian Basin out in the middle of Queensland. I think it's just a massive 1.2 million square kilometres of potential geothermal power. So it's, Yeah,
there are a lot of alternative sources there. And I'm not, as a background in economics, I'm not the one to comment on any of it. It's all beyond me. But I do know that there's going to be more, and there's some that we probably can't see yet, and that there's a ton of investment in this space. And I'm quite optimistic that we'll be able to get to net zero and support our kind of mission transition goals that are really important.
Yeah. Now, Jesse, is there any other renewable energy myths you like to bust right now?
There's probably one or two that come to mind. The first one, which we're sort of getting at, is I hear a lot, like chatting at, the dinner table or, at the park watching my sons play soccer, that renewables are unreliable. I think is a phrase I've heard a fair bit. And I think like kind of what we're getting at with the Dunkelflaute is that unreliable, I think, is the wrong framing. I think uncertain is a better word. They're actually highly reliable. Like we've had many more coal plant failures in the last couple of years than failures of wind turbines or solar panels. The challenge is kind of a forecasting and an orchestration problem. And it is, I can tell you with great confidence that it will be sunny in the summertime, but I can't tell you exactly which hours are going to be sunny. That's the challenge here. And so we need kind of diverse solutions for orchestrating and managing that mix again. And I think the other one, I've listened to your podcast before, and I know I'll wade into the nuclear discussion, because the other kind of myth that I hear in this space around nuclear that I find interesting is that nuclear is a really good solution for like a modern renewables heavy grid. And I don't find that to be terribly compelling. I'd set aside the arguments about costs and about nuclear waste, because I think those are slightly different discussions. But nuclear power plants want to be run at the same level all the time.
Yeah.
So if you think about a generation mix where there's a lot of wind and solar and EVs and people and geothermal and tidal and pumped hydro and whatever else, those things are moving up and down all the time as weather changes. And nuclear is, frankly, a terrible fit for that because it doesn't like ramping up and down dramatically in that way. Battery systems are much more flexible in that way, and other solutions. So, I think that part of the nuclear discussion I find a little bit lost at times. It's not actually a great fit for this system that we have in Australia and the one that is rapidly evolving, even if it were cheap, which I'm not sure it is.
Yeah. And also I think too, because I've got a little bit of interest into this with my research, nuclear's got a huge water footprint too, and we're on the driest habitable continent. So it's like when I tried to build down here in Collie, we got the Wellington Dam. We need 3 Wellington dams to run a power plant, nuclear power plant a year. So it's just nonsense. So I think finally, how do you envision the world in the 2030s and beyond? Because after all, this podcast is about the future.
I think I sort of share Gavin's vision and a lot of other people in this place, where I'm seeing this proliferation of devices and bidirectional flows of energy, where we're consumers of energy and generators of energy, and this increasing complexity. I think if you fast forward, though, it will get a lot simpler for consumers. I think controversial take for someone who's made their career in the energy market, but energy markets are pretty boring. Like, they are dull. It is not the most exciting dinner table discussion at times. And so I think people are busy and they've got lives and they've got things that matter to them. And so I think in the next 15 years, what you're going to see is, as the system gets more complex, some of that is going to get simpler for you and I at home. It's going to become more heavily orchestrated and more automated in a positive way, in that it's going to be kind of more set and forget. I'm going to be able to plug my car in and know that a system like Kaluza is going to make sure that it's orchestrated in the right way. It's charged up, and I don't have to think about it because it's quite complicated to work out when and how to make it all fit together. I've got enough things to try to sort out in my life, let alone understand wholesale energy market dynamics.
Yeah, fair enough. And finally, where else can we find you?
Yeah, I'm a director of product at Kaluza, and I live in Tasmania, so you can find me on a mountain bike in the wilds of Tasmania occasionally. And yeah, hopefully I can come back on the podcast another time and chat again.
More than welcome. Jesse's been a pleasure chatting to you this morning.
Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate it.
And thank you very much to Jesse and also to the team over Sling and Stone. They do an amazing job bringing me awesome guests from time to time, and a big kudos to them. And another one of Sling and Stone's clients is Nathan Rhodes from Intium, and we're going to revisit him in the next episode. Thank you for listening. The Friendly Futurist is a Podcast West production and has been produced and edited by me, Dave Munn. If you love this show, please leave us a 5-star review on your favourite platform. That way it can help me grow. Until next time, friends, remember to stay curious, and the future is user-friendly.
Another Podcasts West production.
This podcast is just for educational purposes and it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial planner or advisor. Please do your homework and seek professional help before you take on any adventures.